The Ben Franklin effect. A psychological trick where a manipulator asks a small favor from their target, knowing that people who do favors for someone they dislike often rationalize it by convincing themselves they must actually like that person, thereby creating false goodwill. Anchoring bias. Exploitation. By setting an extreme initial reference point, for example, an outrageous price or demand, the manipulator skews the victim's perception so that any subsequent offer seems reasonable, even if it's still unfair. False time pressure. Creating an artificial sense of urgency, this deal expires in 10 minutes, forces rushed decisions without proper scrutiny, making the victim more likely to comply out of fear of missing out. The illusion of scarcity. Manipulators exaggerate rarity, only 3 left in stock, to trigger impulsive behavior, exploiting the human tendency to desire what appears limited, even if the scarcity is fabricated. Strategic ambiguity. Using vague language and double meanings allows the manipulator to later reinterpret statements to their advantage, keeping the victim confused and unable to hold them accountable. The bait and prey tactic. Similar to bait and switch but more predatory, this involves luring someone in with an irresistible offer, only to trap them in a situation where they are exploited, for example, scams, cult recruitment. Manufactured coincidences. A manipulator stages random encounters or events to make the victim believe fate or destiny is at play, deepening emotional investment and making them easier to control. The Stockholm Syndrome trap. By alternating abuse with small kindnesses, the manipulator conditions the victim to develop loyalty or affection towards them despite the harm they inflict. The sunk cost fallacy exploitation. Once the victim has invested time, money, or emotion, the manipulator uses their reluctance to waste that investment to keep them trapped in a losing situation. The phantom debt strategy. The abuser convinces the victim that they owe them, whether through guilt, fabricated favors, or emotional labor, creating an unpayable obligation that keeps them subservient. The illusion of choice, presenting 2 or more options that all ultimately serve the manipulator's agenda, giving the victim the false impression of autonomy while ensuring compliance either way. The authority mirage. Fake credentials, exaggerated expertise, or borrowed prestige are used to gain unquestioned compliance, as people naturally defer to perceived authority figures. The blame-shifting gambit. When confronted, the manipulator twists the narrative to make the victim feel at fault, deflecting accountability and leaving them apologizing for things they didn't do. The Trojan horse compliment. A seemingly kind remark is laced with a hidden insult or backhanded jab, undermining the victim's confidence while maintaining plausible deniability. The emotional blackmail play. After all I've done for you, or if you loved me, you would, are guilt-based traps that coerce compliance by weaponizing the victim's empathy. The invisible contract. The manipulator acts as though the victim agreed to unspoken rules, then punishes them for breaking terms that were never actually discussed. The false nostalgia trap. Selectively reminiscing about good times while omitting the abuse, the manipulator tricks the victim into longing for a past that never truly existed. The reverse victim-oppressor tactic. The abuser provokes a reaction, then plays the victim when the target responds, framing themselves as the wronged party to bystanders. The information diet. A form of control where the manipulator deliberately withholds or drip-feeds information to keep the victim dependent and easier to manipulate. The social credit system, personalized. The abuser keeps score of every perceived slight or favor, using it as leverage to demand compliance under the threat of punishment. The false flattery trap. Excessive, insincere praise is used to disarm the victim, inflate their ego, and make them more susceptible to influence or exploitation. The invisible fence method. Through subtle hints, veiled threats, or past punishments, the victim is conditioned to self-regulate their behavior to avoid crossing invisible boundaries. The comparison game. Your friend would do this for me. Or why can't you be more like X? Creates artificial competition, eroding self-worth and fostering compliance. The manufactured crisis. By fabricating or exaggerating emergencies, the manipulator forces snap decisions, bypassing the victim's critical thinking and ensuring obedience. The puppeteer's paradox. The abuser secretly influences multiple people in a group, making them believe they are acting independently when, in reality, they are being orchestrated. The invisible puppeteer. A master manipulator pulls strings behind the scenes, ensuring their influence is felt without ever being directly implicated in controversial decisions. The false dichotomy. You're either with me or against me forces an ultimatum, eliminating nuance and pressuring the victim into blind loyalty. The gaslighting echo chamber. The manipulator surrounds the victim with allies who reinforce their distorted version of reality, making escape or independent thought nearly impossible. The emotional baiting trap. Deliberately provoking an emotional reaction, anger, tears, to later use it as proof of the victim's instability or irrationality. The phantom menace. Inventing an external threat. They're all out to get us, to justify controlling behavior and keep the victim dependent on the manipulator for protection. The false prophet ploy. Positioning themselves as the only one who truly understands or can save the victim, the manipulator fosters cult-like devotion. The invisible leverage trick. The abuser collects compromising information, secrets, insecurities, but never openly threatens. Instead, the victim self-censors out of fear. The chameleon effect. The manipulator constantly shifts personalities to match their target's desires, making themselves appear to be the perfect match when it's all an act. The slow drip poison. Instead of outright lies, the manipulator seeds small distortions over time, gradually warping the victim's perception until they no longer recognize the truth. The dependency loop. First, the manipulator makes the victim rely on them emotionally, financially, or in other ways, then systematically removes alternatives to ensure total control. The invisible handshake. The victim is made to feel they entered into an unspoken agreement, then punished for violating terms that were never actually set. The mirage of reciprocity. Small, calculated gifts or favors are given with unspoken strings attached, creating a sense of obligation that the manipulator later exploits. The broken record technique. Repeating the same demand or lie over and over wears down resistance, as the victim eventually accepts it just to end the mental exhaustion. The misdirection play. When confronted, the manipulator changes the subject, deflects, or introduces a new crisis to avoid accountability. The Trojan trust gambit. Pretending to confide in the victim to create false intimacy, only to later weaponize their vulnerabilities against them. The invisible auction. Making the victim feel they must compete for the manipulator's attention, love, or approval, keeping them in a perpetual state of striving. The false mirror. The manipulator reflects back a distorted version of the victim's identity, making them question who they really are and rely on the abuser for validation. The emotional landmine field. The victim must tiptoe around unpredictable triggers, never knowing what will set the manipulator off, keeping them in a constant state of anxiety. The invisible leash. Even when physically apart, the victim feels psychologically tethered, as though the manipulator is always watching, judging, or controlling them. The bait of redemption. The abuser dangles the possibility of change or improvement to keep the victim hooked, but the promised transformation never comes. The psychological black hole. No matter how much love, effort, or sacrifice the victim gives, the manipulator drains them endlessly, offering nothing in return. The soul theft. The victim's personality, interests, and values are gradually erased and replaced with the manipulators, leaving them a hollow shell. 3. The invisible prison. The victim doesn't realize they're trapped until they try to leave. Only then do the psychological bars reveal themselves. The human puppet mastery. The manipulator doesn't just influence decisions, they reprogram the victim's thoughts, making them an extension of the abuser's will. The ultimate gaslighting. The victim no longer trusts their own mind, memories, or emotions, fully surrendering their reality to the manipulator, the most dangerous psychological trap of all.